Live from the land of chlamydia-ridden koalas. It's time for Destiny Down Under.
G'day and welcome to the 170th episode of the Destiny Down Under podcast. As every week, I'm Log Power Slave, joined by Destiny's favourite Loremaster, Sir Wallen, and also Mylan Games.
That's some ultimate shade thrown so far. I didn't put him up to that. I just want to let you know, right? Like that,
no one needs to put me up to this shit.
It wasn't on me.
Oh, you could not have asked for him. That was... How long have you been thinking about that one?
Oh, I was in the shower earlier. I thought about it. Yeah. How do I put the slipper in today?
It is true. We have the OG Lawmaster himself, Sir Wallen, joining us. So thanks for coming along, dude.
Dude, thank you for pulling me out of retirement, guys. Like, I wouldn't know if I was still relevant, you know, had you guys not reached out and picked up the phone and said, "Hey, you want to come on the podcast?" And I was like, "Oh, people still know who I am. This is great, dude." So I can't. And obviously, you guys are paying really well for this.
Yeah.
So I couldn't shoot that down either.
Checks in the money.
I really need the money.
We noticed you were missing that extra soundboard and the sound panel.
The podcast right here is gonna pay for it.
What's it like, $3.95 or something? $3.50. Yeah.
Times are tough, man. You know, I gotta do what I can.
You got to scrap, man. It's all about the hustle.
Hey, you pulled yourself out of retirement, mate. You've been uploading law videos. You're back in the game.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is, you know, to be really honest, like I'm shifting jobs recently. So I was at ESL, which is the Electronic Sports League, one of the larger esport companies in the world for the past 3 years. And when I started there, right, I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. This is my career choice, right? And I put YouTube content making to the side.
Yeah.
And then when I switched jobs, I'm now over at T-Mobile. I was like, okay, I've got some free time. I'm going to get back into it. Something was missing, you know, like me personally. So I just got back into it. Now I have a good-ish cadence. I'm shooting Sundays every day at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard, mostly Destiny content, but then, you know, I'll sneak some other titles in there that people don't like. So
that's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome. We've been looking forward to having you back on. Like, we've sort of been sitting in silence in our pre-show because we just know we crack on too well. We want to save the chats.
We do this every week where it's like the initial 15 minutes of like, whoever our guest is jumping in and me fucking about with all the settings and whatever is normally the best material, and we don't air it or anything like that. So we were literally like, shush, shut up. Just save it. We'll leave it. But
you guys put together like a behind the scenes takes, you know, and sell it at a premium to all your subs. I'm sure people will buy that.
I mean
there's a couple of concerns. There's a couple of concerns. One, I don't think this podcast would have a following. if anyone could get their hands on me and Matt completely unedited, it would be bad.
I don't know, man. Between Matt's t-shirt and that intro, I think you guys are really onto something. I'm just gonna say.
We'll talk about Matt's t-shirt in a minute because it is absolutely beautiful. I'm drawn in by it. But let's look. We've got a couple of important things to get out of the way first. You know, there's been a lot of Destiny news this week, which is good because last week was a bit rough on that front. But the most important thing we've done through the week is we put a tweet out after last week's episode saying that we wanted to basically give away the SteelSeries gear that we'd highlighted over the preceding 3 weeks to someone who copped a bit of a knock with all of this COVID-19 stuff going on. You know, like, so it was really left pretty open-ended. If you know, you could put your case to us in any way, shape, or form, and we'd kind of just give it to who we felt we could most benefit from it. So as it turned out, it's this person, someone that we've met. So it's kind of really better in that way too, because we get to directly support someone who is going through a shit time, but is also a really important part of the Destiny community down here in Australia. So Roman Rags, as nominated by her sister Ruby, the cosplayers, if you were at PAX, you would remember the Hunter and Hawthorne. So Hawthorne, there you go. You're going to get this bundle. You're going to get the 2 keyboards and a mouse.
Awesome.
And while we understand that it's a pretty small gesture in amidst everything that's going on, especially globally, we really hope that a little bit of RGB goodness lifts your spirits. So we'll be in touch. That sounded really ominous, didn't it? There you go. That's it. That's
awesome.
I'm glad we got
she was Hawthorne. She was the Hawthorne cosplay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So
Awesome.
I'm not going to get into the reading out things that are going on in people's lives. That doesn't seem quite right to me. But just take it on good faith that it is absolutely it's warranted. So unreal.
Awesome.
So there we go. All right. Well, Maddie, do you want to tell us the story about that glorious shirt that you were wearing? Because it's actually like we're going to do something a little bit different and something that we probably haven't done all that much of in terms of the podcast. And Wally, you're just along for the ride, man. So just
no, I'm here. I'm strapped in. I'm ready.
You got your Bud Light. You're fucking sweet.
I'm good, dude.
But we're going to dive into this. There's actually culturally a few things going on in Australia.
There's a lot of shit going. Yeah.
So we're gonna talk about that a little bit, and then we're gonna get into Destiny because without the Down Under, there'd be no Destiny Down Under. So let's jump in. Maddie, tell us about your glorious shirt. It is beautiful.
Okay. So this is it's just actually a rainbow serpent. It's part of the Dreamtime stories of Indigenous Australians. It's their sort of creation story. The rainbow serpent made the mountains and the valleys and the rivers. It's from a company that employs and uses Indigenous Australians as their artists to design the shirt. So it's supporting them. It's called Bandura, and Danny. My fiance, Danny, works for government, and her actual role was quite specific to assisting Indigenous communities. She's actually been pandemic planning for Indigenous communities for Western Australia to ensure that COVID-19 didn't get into those communities, because that would be absolutely fucked. Some of these places are extremely remote. There is no hospital near them whatsoever. And unfortunately, the comorbidities of Indigenous Australians are very poor. Heart, lung, multitude of other issues. So it would have been big fucking news if COVID got into Indigenous communities. So that's what Danny's been preventing, and so far, thank God, done a really well job. And we've got I think it's Naidoc Week, which is a celebration of Indigenous culture coming up in June. And so she had ordered a bunch of like shawls and just these fucking dope shirts for all of their team to wear and sort of support that culture. And I was like, they look awesome. I would really love to have some of them to wear on stream. So I've got this rainbow serpent one, and I've got some other ones with some native animals on there, so kangaroos and stuff like that, all in this sort of modified Indigenous artwork. So yeah. I thought it was Anzac Day as well, and so it tied in too, because we actually Indigenous Australians served in World War One, even though they were not formally recognised as a citizen, and even though they legally were not part of Australia or Europe or the colonies, they were not even classified as humans. Basically, during that time, some of them did enlist and did volunteer, and they played a role in Anzac. If you're from the US audience, ANZAC stands for Australian and New Zealand Army Corps, and Anzac Day represents when we went to Gallipoli. Essentially, 400,000 people died during World War One, storming Gallipoli. That's total loss. I think it's about half of that was Australian and New Zealand troops, and British colony.
It's one of the days that, like, this is kind of the first day that, at least for me, coming up on this on a personal level, like pretty much every year we get down to a service and all that sort of thing. It is a huge deal here, and it has become a bigger and bigger deal as through the course of my adult life. But obviously, with everything going on with COVID and all that, people can't get together this year. So it feels like there's a really important spoke in the wheel missing of what it is to be an Australian at the moment, or what it is to be a New Zealander at the moment. So what we did, and what I've seen a lot of people do around the country, they promoted this. It was basically just get out on your driveway and listen to the last post and sort of celebrate in your community while maintaining social distance and all of that sort of stuff. So I was up at 5:30 this morning with the kids and the missus out on the driveway and blaring the last post out through Rachel's car stereo and that sort of stuff. So it was good. I mean, pretty much everyone in our street was out on the street, and it felt while it is always a sort of it's a somber observance kind of thing, just being out there with, our immediate sort of local community it felt good, man. It felt good to be sort of, everyone's going through the same shit. Everyone understands, and everyone's kind of trying to do their best to, pay respect to something despite the huge dramas that are going on in the world right now. So it was good. It was good.
Is the last post uniquely Anzac, or is that?
I'm not
I was
sure,
just thinking
honestly.
for the US audience. Do you know what we mean when they said the last post? It's like it's a trumpet, right?
Yeah.
No clue, honestly. Yeah.
What do they play with? Like, it's almost like, it's not a funeral service, but like a memorial service for servicemen and women in the US. Like, it's sort of part of that tradition. We have the last post. We have a
It might be
moment of
taps
silence
from the grave. It might be taps. That might be the closest equivalent. I'm not sure, honestly. It's something that I've not looked into, because I mean, this is I've never really looked at Anzac Day from the outside looking in. I'm always we're born in this kind of thing.
I've never had to think about trying to explain some of that stuff.
Well, yeah, I mean, you guys,
a bugle, yeah.
you gotta realize that, like, America itself, right, and the United States in general, is very inclusive, in that sense, where, or I think exclusive is the right word, where most average Americans don't look outside the borders in terms of what Europe, Australia, any other country or continent is really doing, right? And that's, not necessarily a good thing, but I just want to say it's, congratulations to you guys, obviously, and I think it's a great thing to see that you guys are sharing your national pride, especially with what's going on right now. I think if you look at anything out of America that's currently coming, you can see that, a lot of people there's a division almost, right? In right down the middle. And that's something that's been more pronounced now because of the actions, or really of COVID in general, where it's almost kind of pronounced the split of how the average Americans sort of feel about each other. So I just want to say, that having that sense of national pride and unity is a great thing. So, even if it is a somber note.
So I actually found out a bit of information about my great grandfather.
This is the best thing I've read. Like, this is what prompted all of this, because Matt tweeted it out this morning, and we're having a quick conversation. I'm like, dude, you got to talk about that on the podcast, because it's an incredible story. It's nuts. So
see if I can hold it together. All right, it's a bit. I didn't expect to get this information.
New content. Mylan cries.
I'm gonna censor the full name, because it's sort of my heritage as well. So I'll just use his first name. And it's from my aunt, who sent it this morning. So when she says Pop, she's talking about her grandfather, which is my great grandfather. If that makes sense, right? And so Frederick was my grandfather and great grandfather to you. He was a wonderful man. He loved to tell jokes and do magic tricks for Brian and I. That's my dad. He never spoke to my dad, your Pop, about his war service during World War I. It's hard to imagine how he recovered from what he saw and experienced. And yet my memory of this man was he always had a smile on his face and a twinkle in his eye. I just wanted to give you a little of his journey during World War I on this Anzac Day. Sadly, he was involved in some of the major battles. Pop was 24 years old when he left Western Australia in April 1916 with the 28th Battalion. His first experience of the war was the cliffs of Gallipoli. The initial tragedy had occurred, and his role was to provide reinforcement till the end of the year. His mother received a telegram in early December advising he had been, quotation, wounded in action. Despite trying to find further information about him for a number of months, it was not until Feb that she was advised he was back with his unit, now on the Western Front. He must have been a harrowing 2 months for his mum. In February 1916, he travelled from hospital to France and the Western Front. There, he was in the major battle of, I'm going to stuff up these French names, Pozières, and then in Somme Valley. Is it Somme or
Battle
Somme Valley?
Somme, yep.
Battle of the Somme. In the Somme Valley, where many of his mates did not survive. In 1917, he fought in the battles of Bellecourt, Menin Road, Brudsende Ridge, and Pol Capel. Records show he was given 12 days leave in England, probably alone with no family or friends, resting in order to return to the atrocities of war. In 1918, he fought in the German Spring Offensive, where he was wounded again. He was in various hospitals for 3 months, and once again, his mother received a telegram giving her little information except that he was wounded. I found a telegram from her asking if he was in hospital. The reply could not confirm his whereabouts for her. Pop returned to the battalion in August 1918, where there he continued to hold the crossing points of the Somme River around Péronne and in advance beyond Mount St. Quentin. Their last actions in the war were fought as part of the effort to break through the Beaurivière line from October. Pop returned home to Australia in September 1919 after 3 years and 269 days in the war effort. Makes me feel very sad and teary to think about what he suffered and endured in less than 4 years. He returned home and got on with his life with no one hearing a word of complaint about what he had to experience. He married Mary, grandma, and had 6 children, Dad, his oldest child. My pop died suddenly in 1974, a year after his beloved Mary, seemingly from heartbreak. I'm very grateful to Pop and all he has given our family, many values and virtues to be proud of. Lest we forget, never again.
That's nuts. Oh man,
dude, I'm sorry I fucked up all those fucking names. I know people are gonna flame me for it, but like,
come on, man,
and I feel like I should know them, but literally googling them, they're like all fucking major battles, through Paris. They're like,
as when we were talking about it this morning, I recognized
he should be fucking dead.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
It's crazy.
That's a pretty insane story of survival, and we wouldn't have a little Mylan if you hadn't been through it and survived all of that. So, an incredible reminder of just how real all this is, and how 4 generations down the line we live because of the sacrifices that were made by him and so many others. So, God, how do we bring it back up? You know what?
This week at Bungie.
I'm gonna do the other Australian thing and just drink a can of Solo. That's pretty fucking Australian, I think, to do today. And wear a King Parrot shirt. Great fucking Melbourne grindcore band, Victorian grindcore band. So there you go.
Low on fizz, so you can slam it down.
Low on fizz, so you can fucking slam it. So remember those brilliant ads from the 80s? Solo, man, just running along the road, but drinking this. Can you imagine running and drinking this shit? You pretty much have like a diabetic stroke. Do you remember when
he was riding a wheelie bin down the street?
No, I don't remember. We're going to have to dig that one out.
Anyway.
All right, we're going to hit the sting. We're going to come back. We're going to talk to Wally about what he's been doing for the last 3 years and Destiny. All right, cool. So this week you've met Wally already if you've been listening to the podcast so far. But dude, you've had probably one of the most interesting journeys of anyone we've ever had the pleasure of speaking to on the podcast. In terms of, you started out doing the law stuff. You kind of inspired a generation of budding law masters, like the one sitting directly above me in his little box there with his loud shirt on, and then went on to do your work for ESL. So, like, if people have not met you before, if they're just bumping into you for the first time right now, how would you sum yourself up in your own words? And that's an incredibly unfair question, but try your best.
It's like a job interview, man. No, I honestly, I would say I've always, like people like will always say like they have like a North Star, right? Like that's my North Star. That's what I want to do. Like I'm super passionate about animals or plants or some shit, right? And so that's all they do is study plants and animals, and they love that, right? For me, it's never really been about like finding the one thing that I've always enjoyed. It's always been just trying to be a part of as many experiences as possible. Buddy of mine lives a very sort of ridiculous lifestyle, right? Meets bunch of women, telling stories all the time, big into fitness, tries many things. His big rationale is that he wants to tell a lot of stories. He wants to have a lot of experiences. For whatever reason, that's like stuck with me, I think, very deeply on a personal level, because I think you hear about a lot of people that they'll always come back and they'll regret what they did in life. They'll land in a 9 to 5 and then they'll spend 20, 30 years there. And that's it. And that's their life, right? And I think like I thought about that for a long time and I was like, I don't want to do that, right? If I go from, whether it's failure to failure to failure, whatever, or success to success to success, whatever that looks like, I am growing as a personal person along the entire journey, right? And that's what I've been going for. So I think the one thing that I've always stuck with, that center, orbit point, has been gaming, right? Gaming as a whole has been the one thing that I've always stuck with, and I probably always will stick with, because it's just a part of my core discipline. So that's a very roundabout way to answer your question, but if I had to answer it, that's how I'd answer it.
We don't get many like overarching philosophical answers, but that is pretty incredible, to be honest. Yeah, good.
Sorry, the beer.
So, tell us about your work with esports, right? Because
man,
been a big part. I mean, I'm keen to hear these stories, good, bad, and ugly.
I mean, no one from my old job's probably watching, so it's no harm in.
Oh shit!
There's no harm in just throwing a couple jabs in here, right? Look, esports is great, man. It's probably, if you had to encapsulate it into anything, it's one of the best, most immature industries to be a part of, right? Because it's a bunch of fucking kids at the end of the day, right? That's really what it is. Like, the people that are big into esports now are guys in their mid 30s, maybe, right? And even then, they've had very, very little experience. They've done one or two big things like an ESL 1 or an IEM 10 years ago. And now they've landed a C-level job somewhere at some gaming company where they sit in a round table of what people call the esports Illuminati and just sprout shit, right? That's what the esports industry really is. If I'm going to be truthfully honest, you've got a bunch of people that, get together at these major conventions and shake each other's hands all the time and buy each other drinks and talk about how cool they are and how the glory days were. And most of those people really aren't doing anything for the industry, right?
So here's a question. Do you think, not esports is over, but what I'm picking up from what you're saying is sort of how I felt, is that it was the golden age of esports is probably not now, although maybe you would argue with what Fortnite's done has reinvigorated it somewhat. But with streaming and Twitch, I feel like that's definitely taken a big part of that sales away, or the wind out of the esports.
I think you really got to define it, right? So take like traditional sports, okay? So in America, right, the NFL is arguably one of the biggest, most watched, right? Football, right? That sport, it has its own fandom, own subsect. You literally, as a kid, where you are born and how your family brings you up, that's the team that you're brought up into, right? So I'm a Green Bay Packer fan, not by choice, because my parents were Green Bay Packers fan, right?
Yeah.
Esports doesn't have that yet, right? It doesn't have that sense of like legacy, right? Where if I, and me and my girlfriend have a kid, or Mylan, you and your fiance have a kid, right? You're going to be the first real generation to bring them up into esports fandom because you're a TSM fan or a Fnatic fan or whatever the fuck, right? That's the one thing that I think esports is missing. And that's just because it's, it's young. It's only like 10, 15 years old.
Do you think it will ever have that? Because it's so dynamic and so...
Absolutely. Million percent. Wow. Absolutely. I don't know if the Overwatch League and the Call of Duty League are the two leagues that are going to last forever. I think they're two great examples of what esports could eventually become, because they're franchise systems, right? Where cities own teams, right?
Yep.
Essentially, right? They're still owned by parent organizations like, NRG, Optic Gaming, whatever, but they live in the city and they have a local fandom. In traditional esports, it was super uprooted, right? Where I could be a fan of a European team and never see them, but because I like some of those players, right? Or take some of the players from New York Excelsior, right? That Overwatch League team, I think a majority of that 12 are Koreans. Like, they have Korean nationality. They're not American players. They're not a New York team. They're a Korean team playing in New York in the Overwatch League. But the reason it's rooted is because they continue to play out of New York, right? And they're building that fandom up. So I think as we move towards more of these like large scale offline events and more city-based, city-focused leagues, you're going to see more of that style of fandom where maybe in 5-10 years, maybe even sooner, you're going to be walking down the street and someone in Perth or Sydney is going to be wearing some esports jersey of some kind, and you're going to recognize it. It may not be like an American brand like a Team Liquid, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was something closer to you guys at home.
Dude, this fascinates me, and I know fucking nothing about it for someone who's spent so much time in game. So, what was your role like, or how? I just want to get an idea of what would be a regular day, or maybe like, because you were involved with the actual events too, right? Like, what would your day look like with an actual event taking place? So
I think a good way. So at ESL, so my role at ESL is a little bit different than T-Mobile, right?
Okay, they're different things.
Yeah, my role at ESL was a publisher relations manager, which is just like a fancy term for like an account manager, right?
Okay.
We focused on the relationships with publishers and developers, so the Activisions of the world, or the Tencents, or the PlayStations, whatever, right?
Right.
They would come to us, or we would go to them, right? Much like an agency works with a brand.
Yeah.
And we would help them craft esports ecosystems based on our experience and knowledge, right? The good thing that ESL and companies like Faceit, MLG to an extent, and like Esports Engine, Battlefy, what they bring to the table is sort of all of their failures. And I mean this in a good way, right? These companies have existed for a period of time, but they failed so many times that they know exactly not to do, right? And what exactly to do to find success, especially when it comes to the online and offline. So
when you say offline, online, you mean like the difference between running a tourney on Twitch versus running it in person?
Yeah, to an extent, right? I would always try to look at these things holistically, right? Like building a sandwich. There's a good comparison to a pyramid, right? The online tournaments that we're usually seeing are stuff that isn't truly broadcast on Twitch. You might have like a community broadcaster get up on his podcast and do it, but the Twitch rivals, that's like a step up, right? That's like almost your pro level, quality. Right? That's it's like your semi-pro level. The step up from that really is the offline level events, the Fortnite World Cup in New York last year, for example, or the Call of Duty World Championships, or anything in Southeast Asia in regards to, mobile MOBA games, right? Or mobile FPS games like PUBG Mobile and Honor of Kings. These two titles in Southeast Asia, very close to you guys, right, are some of the biggest titles in the world when it comes to esports.
So what would be the prize pool at the mobile PUBG tournament?
In Southeast Asia, prize pool is usually something like 250,000 USD to 500,000 USD. Usually, right? Usually.
Can you imagine playing on your fucking phone and getting that?
But just think of it this way, right? If you were a Dota, right? You're familiar with Dota, right? Valve's MOBA title, right? The international prize pool, right? That thing's tens of millions of dollars, right? That's not a joke, right? That's more money than most people make ever or will ever see.
How much we have in this podcast? Because I could probably stand this topic. Hey, I got more questions. Lo, you're gonna have to cut me off, right?
No, go.
So, all right. When did Overwatch League come out, and how has that made an impact, and how successful has that been compared to the MOBAs or the big ones?
So Overwatch League launched 2016, 2015. I think it's like 2016, right? And it was sort of the first real push of its kind in terms of a franchise system. So
right, because it was teams and shit, and you had to like buy in how many millions to like buy a team or something, right?
Yeah, I don't know the exact financials, but if you're familiar with the LCS, which is Riot's North American League of Legends system, right? Teams, there's usually a slot-based system, right, to keep it even, and to be able to buy in, you need to have some amount of capital behind you, right?
Yeah.
But the reason it exists like that is because you get a cut of the league's profits, very much close to how the NFL or the MLB or any of those major leagues work, right? So sponsorship revenue, team tickets, media right deals. As you buy into the league, you're essentially saying, we're going to invest our capital in the league, but we expect a return as an owner, and we expect a return via the league.
Okay.
Right? So it's not, you're not just throwing money in and saying,
it's not just entry ticket. You actually almost have stock in the company.
You're pulling money back out, and that's the ultimate objective with these franchises, right? So the Call of Duty League and the Overwatch League are the two things. I think what the Overwatch League has done, and to an extent, and this is just my opinion, right? So this isn't like a hot take, or maybe it kind of is. I think what the Overwatch League has done is it's sort of rushed the incubation period, right? Blizzard has done this in the past, almost probably to a fault, where they've artificially inflated an esports system to have it skip the generational stages it needs to be fully self-sufficient. So CSGO, great example, right? That title is never going anywhere, right? Probably not in the next 20 years. It's going to be huge events. Every single major player in the space is going to be a part of that, right? It's not Valorant, sure, will make a dent, but CSGO isn't going to go anywhere, right? It has mega brands behind it like Intel, like Mercedes-Benz. It's not going anywhere. Overwatch League skipped 10 years of development for its actual community base, like guys like us talking about it, and just went right to the franchise model, right? And said, fuck it, we don't care, right? Let's get all the big money now. We're going to go take these traditional sports guys that we've got from the NFL and the MLB and have them go pitch the same people that they've been pitching for the last 5 years in traditional sports. And now we got this new hot shit property called esports where the millennials are all about it, and you want to collect with millennials, don't you?
Because didn't that start like a whole scholarship program in the US, for like college scholarship programs where
I mean, that's
there was like esports college programs.
So there's a couple of those now, right? And look, I'm not personally going to devalue anyone's education, okay? I think that the challenge with that is like, okay, say you get an esports degree in what? Esports team management? Like,
well, how does it normally work? Don't you normally just do whatever degree, but it's paid for because you're on like, a sports scholarship? Is that how it works or not?
Not in America. No.
Right.
No, we typically like they're okay. So I'll be fair to your point, Malin. I don't want to be a dick.
You can be a dick.
There are some programs that exist, like collegiate scholastic programs, that if like you and I participated, like say the three of us put a Rocket League team together, okay?
Yep.
Yeah.
And we kicked everyone's ass in the Rocket League. Okay.
Yeah.
Now we have a chance because we're playing in the collegiate Rocket League level for, USC. We have a scholarship for the rest of our 3 years of education, right? Because we're playing for USC. That makes sense, right? And those exist. The challenge is that all of these colleges, because they know that the average generation, guys basically like us and a little bit younger, are no longer going to college anymore, because most of those degrees that you were getting 10, 20 years ago that our parents were getting are no longer applicable in many of the job fields. The ones that really are applicable are things like computer science, STEM degrees, right? But shit like political science and history, that's like, there's no value in getting that. And all you're doing is essentially putting yourself into debt. So a lot of these colleges, in an attempt to stay relevant and grab the core US base that is very afraid of going into hundreds or $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 of debt for the rest of their life, they've come up with esports programs. And they have no one with any type of real education running these esports programs, right? They're very much people just figuring it out as they go on, because the industry itself has only been around for 10 years, right? There's not 40, 50-year-old guys.
So fascinating. I love this shit so much. So wait, Okay, we've sort of got a tiny bit off track, but I know we probably need to move on a bit. Overwatch skipped generations in its development, and you're probably getting to the point of saying that this was harmful for their success, or have they recovered, or it's still too early to tell?
I think it's a mix of a little bit of all of those three things. I think you're traditionalists in esports, right? I would consider myself one, right? I think things need to grow organically. I think it's up to the community and the fan base to grow that shit themselves with the support of the publisher and third-party TO. Okay.
Yeah.
I think what they've done is they've sort of forced it, right? And they said, here's a league, here's a lot of money to play it for. It's the one only of its kind. We're going to get out ahead of everyone else before, CS becomes too big or LCS continues to gobble up the market, right? And there was really at the time in North America no other true FPS titles that were creating something like this. You had CS:GO, but CS:GO is an international thing, and North America itself is sort of an esports ecosystem is 5 years behind Europe and maybe even, I would say, 7 years behind Southeast Asia.
I mean, I want to keep talking, but I don't know
Go.
if we should or if people are happy.
Look, for mine, like as an avid fucking sports fan and that, it does seem really obvious from the outside looking in that skipping a generation of that indoctrination of fans is going to lead to, as Etz just said in the chat, and is probably the perfect analogy for that. It's basically a competition right now that is a mile wide, but it's inch deep, and no one's really emotionally invested in it. And that's what you're getting at with like why throwing money at something that is culture isn't necessarily the way to go about it, right? Like that's
totally agree. Totally, I think you're spot on, right? I think the guys in your chat are switched on 100%. I think the value really in North American esports and really just global esports is leagues like the CDL, where you have Call of Duty, a title that came out in 2005, right? Shit that we all grew up on. No one can escape COD. You've seen it, you've played it, you've touched it, you've talked about it at some point in your life, right? That's talking about a community that has been around forever. Yep. The same guys that are playing today, guys like Scump, guys like Crimsic, guys like Formal, they were playing 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago under the CWL, which was MLG's old property, right? So that is the type of property that I want to see successful, because that community deserves it more than anyone else. They've been guys that have been waiting for large capital like Activision and Blizzard to essentially say, we're going to support you. We're going to build something around you, and we know the community is going to show up. So I think CDL is a success story. I think Overwatch League is sort of like the proof of concept or, case scenario kind of thing. How do we innovate on that? And they did it with the CDL. How
do you think that, like, look, sorry, man. Matt, you've had your fucking go.
Okay, but we need that sound by the PM. Andrew, it's got to be
Andrew. How, for mine, and like I do watch a little bit of this sort of stuff, but I've not yet really become emotionally invested in any capacity, primarily because everything that we're about is Destiny, and Destiny is so far from being in this frame, especially at the moment, that it's...
Are you saying Destiny's not esports ready?
Unfortunately, man. Unfortunately.
I mean, would it be incredible? Yes, but to sit here pragmatically and say that we think Destiny is going to be an esport anytime soon would be lying to you. I'll say that. But do you think that there's an additional challenge that comes along with esports that traditional sports don't face, in that there's kind of like the inherent redundancy of technology and games that go along with it? Like, like you use NFL football as an example. That game hasn't changed all that much in 100 years. And people would know what they're going to get.
Changed a lot, though.
Sorry?
The technology has changed a lot, right? And that's also influenced a lot of strategies.
Like you look at a footballer from now and a footballer from 50 years ago, and they look completely fucking different in terms of physiology. So there's always that. But do you think that from the outside looking in, from my perspective, the biggest hurdle that they're going to have is transitioning sort of generationally between games? Because you cannot... Like, I don't want to watch CS:GO because it's not a game that I play, and I don't give a shit, because I look at it and I go, that's ugly. Why, like, I mean, from the outside looking in, I know I'm not shitting on the game. It's just something that I've never been particularly drawn to for that reason. So, like, when you've got a game that is coming out that is on the cusp of, like, Fortnite's probably the best recent example.
Yeah, I was going to say
to jump on that quickly, but they've got to be able to continually do that to keep something like an overarching ESL sports league going for indefinitely, because otherwise it's just going to be built around the lifespan of a game. How do you have you got a take on that, or what do you think?
That's a good question.
I think you really got to look at the pre-existing titles in the space like League of Legends, right? And you got to look at CS:GO, right? And you simply just have to just look at it from a numbers purely, only a numbers perspective, right? Those leagues continue year on year to grow in viewership, right? And then now they've switched their metric, right, on how they measure success. So it's now called average minute audience, which is essentially like it's average concurrent audience over
viewer time,
average watch time, or some shit like that, right? And essentially, this is now the golden metric to determine if you're successful. It used to be peak viewership, right, and concurrent viewership. So how many people did you get in the room, and what was the average across the broadcast? Both of those numbers, I think the AMA is the best one. I think when you talk about peak viewership, it's a bullshit number, right? Because you've got like Twitch embeds that live everywhere, and Blizzard does something where if you're watching via BattleNet, you're counted as a viewer twice, or some crazy thing that they fixed. I hear what you're saying, and I agree with you. I think that's an inherent challenge of any sport traditionally, right? If you look at the MLB's numbers here in North America, right, their numbers from both a ticket fan base perspective, a physical ticket holder perspective, and an online viewership perspective from linear media are going down year on year, right? The league itself is suffering, and a lot of it is to that point where it's it's America's game, right? It's always been kind of called that. It was something that our parents grew up with. It started in the early almost 1900s, right? 1910s, 1920s, just coming out of the Great Depression, right? This was the game that people went to watch. Early hero. But now when you talk about the MLB, it's you're competing with the NFL, the NBA, ESports, whatever ESPN2 has, with bowling championships or croquet matches, whatever, right? There's so much more share. There's share of voice out there, right? And that's going to be the biggest challenge, is that some of these traditional sports titles and even the esports titles cannot penetrate to capture enough share of voice in the market to say to you, right, I'm engaging, I demand your viewership, you need to tune into me. You're going to say exactly like, I got better shit to do. I want to play Destiny. I want to watch my own shit. This doesn't interest me. And that's okay. I think that's an okay thing. You should be able to say that, right? Because if things aren't valuable to you as the viewer, and they're not valuable to many people, then they don't really deserve to continue, right? And they need to innovate to get your viewership back. And how can they do that? That's the questions they need to be asking themselves as leagues and publishers, right? How can we keep you, right? We don't want to lose you as a viewer. How do we get you back?
I think it's one of those things.
I love that question, because it's like,
I think it's one of those things, personally, just having a stab at this, right? If this becomes enough of a money spinner, which it clearly is on that trajectory, to become something that a game is designed around to an extent. Obviously every game's designed for people playing on their fucking lounge or at home in their little war room or whatever. But I think right now, like, you take the example of CS:GO and you say, well, once it starts to wane and the interest starts to dip off and all that, and fair enough, this is an industry that's growing now, so you're probably not seeing that. You're seeing it continually grow. Sure. But I think that that ultimately we will get iterations of games that are tied not to development cycles of consoles and things like that, but closer to audiences and audience retention on things like esports, if it grows to that point. That's what I'm getting at. Like, just thinking at it from the outside in, like, that innovation and new hook is gonna be pivotal if they really want to make this grow. Because, like, you look at Fortnite's still killing it, but in 2 years' time,
Travis Scott concert, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's crazy. I've seen more insane shit going with that game than I've seen in any other game ever.
Yeah, but I guess your question is, like, in 20 years' time, will Fortnite be as popular as NFL has been over a fucking 100 years?
2018 Fortnite in 20 years' time isn't going to be the biggest esports game.
You're going to be.
I've got a hypothetical for you, right? What if? So I think obviously esports is treated like other competitive sports, where you have a player who specifically plays a sport. In this case, a game. Why are we not moving to, say, a model where you have an esports team and you have your SPS team and you have your real-time strategy team, and as the game changes, I mean, your roster would obviously change, but you would actually have some heritage there now with them. Okay, so as the game changes, these are our Fortnite guys, and now we're moving on to the next game, and
so
right,
you're talking about having like an overarching system that covers all games.
Yeah.
Well, I think so.
Get off the internet now and patent it. What are you doing, you idiot? What have you done?
You would support your local team still, and you know that they would get the best roster for the current game of the latest 5 years.
So some people do that, right? They age out, right? Essentially, that's what they're doing, right? So it's like, say, I'm 29, right? I'm at gaming prime when it comes to like, Twitch-based shooters. I'm at it. This is it. It's all downhill from here.
I can confirm it is absolutely all downhill from there, mate.
Yeah, right. You get shit on by kids calling you boomer in Destiny, chat, right?
Yeah.
Cool, right? Like I was here, back in beta to Destiny 1, no big deal, right? Whatever, right? No one cares about that anymore. I think you do have that, to your point, Malin, but to a very, very small extent, right? Because it's because you have this influx of so many like these traditional people from traditional sports that are just don't want to do it anymore, right? They're fed up with the bureaucracy and the bullshit and the lack of innovation. And you have these partner managers, these sponsorship managers, program producers, whatever, coming into esports. And the guys that would be aging up, people like grassroots tournament organizers or even players, they don't have that position because some of these larger teams are owned by VC firms. They're owned by private capital. And they're going to start pulling in people that have a more business style of thinking, right? Where they can generate year-on-year revenue for something like an esports team. And they're not going to pick up Joey from their team. They're going to pick up Billy, who was a partnership manager for brands on the NFL. And so there's a dynamic of that where it's a new industry. And because the industry wants to make money, people are in it to make money. They're going to go out and find people with some style of expertise and experience that's close to what they're looking for. And it doesn't come from esports.
Yeah. I guess that's what I'm getting at, is like it's so early in its development, and I feel like we're still following the rules of traditional sport. It'd be interesting to see if it's like, why are we trying to make a square peg fit a round hole?
Yeah. No, I agree with that. Yeah.
I think that's always the case with innovation.
Fucking mouse. We don't need different balls. Like, we don't need different fields. We don't need anything. We don't have the same limitations as a physical sport.
You can do it from home in your pajamas. It's fucking great.
Yeah, it's incredible. Anyway. I think the one takeaway you just have to look at esports is that it provides a unique opportunity for almost everyone to participate in, right? Whereas traditional sports, you're gated by your physical ability, right? And
that's a great point.
Look, to make it to the top level of esports, you have to be good. It's not a freebie. You have to be better than other people. Just like physical sports, you have to be either genetically gifted or physically gifted or work really fucking hard. Esports is still the same side of that. It's just more on the Twitch-based shooter, how well you can move your mouse around your monitor and how quickly you can, assign your brain to targets. It's the same style. It's just two spectrums. So, but the difference is that if you and I wanted to go play a private match in Destiny, we can go do that right now. We can just load up our game and go. If you and I wanted to go jump on an NFL football field, well, we're shit out of luck. We go play catch in the backyard, but we're not playing on the field, right? Exactly. So that's the nuance of it, that it opens up opportunity for all of us, which is the great thing about it.
I'm gonna put a pin in this right now by saying that we're probably gonna have to do a part 2 of this at some point down the road, because I think there's so much yet that we have not covered. But we probably need to transition into actually talking some.
No, totally cool. I'm here, guys. I love esports.
But look, if you
really
are rocking on
man.
in chat, or
Really
you're listening to this wherever you are, tweet at us and tweet at Wally and tell him how much you've enjoyed it, just as Matt and I have, because this is something that we've spoken about sort of in the background for a long time, and it's super interesting to get someone with actual sort of industry impressions. So super good. And I guess this is the best possible segue to get into hyper competitive things like Guardian games.
Yes.
Now, I did make a promise on the internet that I would be completely insufferably smug if Titans won the day, and they've won 2 days in a row, so I think we can just put a line through it. All other classes are shit. Titans are the best. The end. Matt, thoughts, comments? No?
Mate, you fucking know what's happened. They've done a weighted system, and they've initially started off with the weighted system to like see if it could be fair and equitable. And then originally they thought, oh fuck, Titans are getting absolutely slammed, and they've grabbed their fucking mouse and they've just slammed it to the fucking 150% weighted system or whatever they did, multiplier. Oh, what should we multiply? Oh, I don't know, 400. And then now Titans have shot. Look, fucking Bungie won't admit it, but that's exactly what's happened.
You seem very butthurt. You just seem
Matt,
very...
are you a hunter? Is that what you mean? Is that
yeah, I'm a hunter now. Yeah.
Yeah, he was like 2 months ago. He was a fucking Titan.
Two months.
I went Warlock, Titan, and then
Hunter. So when you play now, you're just doing your little Naruto run across the map, zooming around, right? With your stompies.
Twirly twirls.
I'm just gonna go out there and say that Matt, like, God bless him, may well be the worst hunter of all time, though. Like he's the only hunter I've ever seen stressed about cracking a golden gun because he's used to not getting any kills with it, despite being perfectly fucking good at every other part of the game. He's probably better at me than in the actual mechanics and shooting and all of that. It's supers. He is useless.
Every fucking super I suck at, and it's like I change every time I fail it. I change it to something else. I just have not found I've found my groove with just a general gameplay with the hunter, and the dodge ability and having that is amazing. But I've not found anything that I could consistently get kills with in a super state.
So that like pole dancer subclass, not your speed, buddy.
Everyone just runs away from me. I can't catch them.
Too slow.
Okay.
I'm gonna need to dig out that video that we did. You just said pole dancer, and it reminded me of that stupid fucking.
That's where I'm getting it from, because I remember that video, man. I remember that video.
I think it's time to retweet that puppy out. I had so many people comment on that and like, is that fucking Sir Wallen? Seriously? Yeah. How did you talk him into that? I just asked.
I swear, like that was around the same time last time I was on the podcast as well. Like right around the same time we did that.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
that was a blast. Yeah. Look, I think personally the Guardian games is really cool. I just wanted to ask you guys a question. Is it true that the Warlocks and the Titans have signed an alliance? Is that
I'd never ally with a Warlock. Never.
Because that's what I've heard. I've heard the Warlocks and Titans have come together in true righteousness to beat down the ultimate evil, the Hunters.
I heard the way that Titans were getting ahead where they were deleting their characters because they've got no honor, and restarting characters to get the free medals and then handing them in. That's what I fucking heard.
You just made that up. Or?
No.
Really, that's a thing.
No, I think you can do that. Yeah.
Rick Ackers fucking tweeted it this morning.
Oh, God. So, no, like, what we're saying is that ultimately, as much as all of us already knew this anyway, it's completely pointless. It's basically whose line is it anyway? All the points are fucking made up and it doesn't really matter, so who gives a shit?
Yeah.
I still think that ultimately Hunters will win.
Games. What do you think about Guardian games in general? To be honest, I think the competition side of it is fine. I really do like the items you get. I like there's been some really great memery coming from it with people. You know, there's great banter and all that kind of stuff. But the actual games itself,
I just don't give a shit about bounties anymore, man. I just fucking hate bounties. Anytime that one of these events comes around and it's like, you know what burnt me out on this completely was the fucking dawning and that XP shit you could do where you could just bake cookies and go and give them to people. And that was,
you don't like baking cookies for Eva Levante? It doesn't.
On a personal level, on a wholesome note, I'm fine with it. But the fact that it was just like a boring fucking completionist thing that I did for like 2 whole days. And then I went like, why am I doing this shit to myself? And now ever since then, I can't get out of this mode where anytime I'm given a bounty, I kind of roll my eyes at it and see it like a shopping list where I've got to go down to fucking Coles and do my groceries and buy all the shit and then go back and, get it home. And then the only thing that you get as a reward for doing that is another fucking slightly different grocery list that you've got to go down and do again. And a pat on the back, maybe.
You know what I can't understand is I don't understand why they did like bounty inception. I don't understand why they made that even more complicated than what it needed to be, almost like trying to make it look like a bounty. Like you complete bounties to complete bounties. Like you have your bounty items.
And then there's an overarching bounty that is completing bounties. Yeah.
There's a quest step about completing bounties. Why not just make the bounties easier to get medals and the medals are just tokens? Why call them medals? Just call them fucking tokens. And you do bounties, you get tokens, you put the tokens in the thing.
I think it's a great question, man.
Honestly, it is one of the things after reading the 12, something that they're going to be addressing in the near term future is this whole bounty thing and how they're going to try and innovate on it. And I think like for a lot of people who've been playing Destiny through its entire lifespan, it's one of those things that has kind of just been, it's been the gradual itch that's grown into kind of the festering fucking sore of like, I don't want to do this shit anymore. It's just, I don't like, for mine, I'm not that kind of dude anyway. I'm not a completionist. I get in and I play whatever I want to fucking play. And if that lines up with what, I'm required to do for a bounty, good. And if not, it's going to sit there until it expires and then it's fucking gone. So
just quick question. What was the last title you guys went for?
I've never got a title.
You never got a title?
For me,
what about you, Log?
I got last season's one and Shadow. I spent a lot of last season doing the stuff from season of Opulence. So it was just stuff that I didn't do at the time. I wasn't playing quite as much then as I was last season. So I did both of those in quick succession quick succession.
So
a month.
The one thing I went for was the Undying, right? Because I love the name of the title. I thought it was super cool. When I went after that just burnt me out completely. Like I didn't play any of Saint 14 coming back. I barely played this season expansion just because I don't understand the bunker system like at all. I think that's part of the problem, right? Is that you have sort of two split branches. You have super casual where you can get on and just dick about and do whatever. But if you really want very excellent sort of cool rewards, you have to divest basically a second job to get those cool titles, right?
Yeah, I know, and that's where it's getting at, and it's no joke. Like I'm looking at this season. I didn't get Undying because I didn't find the activity engaging. I just couldn't be fucked with it, and I went pretty early on in that. I'm like, I have to run this how many fucking times? Oh my god, I'm not doing it.
It's a grind, yeah.
So like, unless you really want something, I think that it's like, I think part of it is tied to like the short termness of these titles, right? Like it's not like you look at the two that I did last season. You've got whatever it is, the Season of the Worthy one.
It's like Savior and
Savior. So compare Savior to Shadow. Now Shadow's still there. You can go back and do it at any time. And I did it 6 months after I could have done it, right? Like And I went back and chipped away at it and did the things that I hadn't done, and I had endless amounts of time to do it. And it was something that kept me occupied when I wasn't particularly interested with what was going on in the current game. With the way the season structure is now, they all go. Like, unless you were there in the moment at the time doing it, you've got your fucking 3-month window to get it done, or it's dusted. That's it. And I think that, I think, like, while from the outside looking in, and probably from Bungie's perspective initially, creating something that pulled people in every season seemed like a really good idea. I think it's rapidly become something that it was like, oh, okay, well, if we have to pull people in every season, we have to have enough there for people that, they're going to have to play for a long time every season to get everything done. And for sort of like the bottom 2/3 of the community, I think you sort of then, you don't do it by default, you do it by choice. And at that point,
Right.
you become like, can I really be fucking bothered with this or not? Like, do I just want to get in and play the way I want to play? Or do I want to jump through all the hoops to get a thing that I may not even use anyway? Titles are cool, don't get me wrong. I love them being instituted in the game. I think the Trials of Osiris title is one of the more better implemented titles. And I think while Grandmaster Nightfalls aren't particularly well received, I think Conqueror, the title for it, of going around and doing them all and not having a time frame on it is fine. It's like Undying, as you said. You know, like you went so hard at it, burnt yourself out, haven't given a shit since. And I think that's probably the thing that needs a revisit. You know, if it's just a seasonal one, it's never going to be the one that people are like, oh man, I've got this. You know, it's not fucking the Trials one. It's not the Conqueror or anything like that. It's not a top tier one. It's not one having done flawless raids. It's nothing that anyone's going to be super prideful of having. So I don't understand why they've got to be super hard to get.
My hot take is I don't want them to be less difficult, right? I think there needs to be varying degrees of sort of separation here. I think that a title is probably one of the more like sort of elusive kind of cool things. It's like gear sets almost in a way. It shows off to your friends your status. You know, where are you in the game? Your gear and your title do those things, right? So I think there should be an element where it's difficult to get. But I think with Undying, it was more like, how much time did you want to invest to get it? It wasn't necessarily difficult, right? Nothing about
I think
doing
that's true of the seasonal pass stuff. The ones that are tied to the seasonal. So it's time. It's not effort or ability. Yeah.
And I think that's my core, I guess, challenge to the system is that, like, if you want to get these titles, you can. Anyone can get these, right? They're not particularly difficult to get. It's, do you have enough energy and willpower and time in the day to invest to get the titles? And there you walk sort of a fine line there of like, well, if you did it any less than everyone would have it, it wouldn't be really elusive, right? And if you kept it the same, you're gonna have people like Sir Wallen bitching from his crypt on his YouTube channel somewhere, right? So like you're gonna get a mix of that, and no one's ever really gonna be happy. I think the term is that, like, you want to be able to have your community sort of walk away not necessarily happy, but content, right? You're never going to make everyone happy, but you can certainly try to make everyone feel content. So those are two separations that I think they're striving for. And I'm hopeful, man. Bungie's done a lot of really boneheaded moves in the past, but all of their recent communication, specifically how they're handling Trials cheaters, right? I think those things are all moving in the necessary right direction. Sure, it takes them much longer than a lot of us believe it should, but we're all sitting on this side of the fence chanting in, right? We're not inside, especially during what is, one of the largest pandemics that we've ever experienced as people.
Definitely
we have no idea
times.
how that's affecting their development cycle, right? So there's just a lot of factors there.
Yeah. Don't you think, I mean, I think I've said it every week, and I think it has to come down to what events, what activities they can feasibly get done for every season. And I think, would you say Menagerie was probably a better or one
I'd
of the
say
best
in
sort of
recent
activities?
times, since the pickup of the seasonal model content like style, I'd say that that Opulence was the peak.
Because of the rewards?
Yes.
And you could farm the roles
repeatability
that you wanted to get.
Yeah.
Repeatability.
And it was a decent, people were doing it.
Mm-hmm.
You could go and do it and grind it, and it wasn't completely fucking boring. It was actually fun to do.
So someone had a good take. I think it was Dark Side Royalty. I'm sure you both maybe are familiar with him, right?
Yeah, Joker, yeah.
He had a pretty good take on like comparing Destiny to, like, I think it was like Final Fantasy 14, where he said, like, Final Fantasy 14 is something like 26, 27 dungeons, a bunch of different raids, and it's got a cyclical sort of end game system that cycles every single week for greater rewards for players, right? And the question you kind of posed was that, like, why isn't there a system similar in Destiny? And I think that's always been sort of like the pulse of this has been like the lack of content in some aspect, right? Or elements that I've never enjoyed since Destiny 1, and I've always been hypercritical about, is time gated content. I think that is the most artificial bullshit that a developer can put in, because it's basically saying we know this shit's quick. We know you're going to get through this in an hour. And if we don't time gate it, you're going to not have anything to do for the next 6 months as we put out another DLC, right? There's an inherent flaw in a development system like that, right? And again, I'm speaking purely from a consumer perspective, right? I just want to give that the context. I have no clue what it takes to develop, right? So I'm just bitching, right? I don't know, right? What it's at, like the Bungie guys over there, like they truly could be like, fuck, man, we're really trying here. I wish these community guys would just kind of like see it from our perspective. But because, only, Damage and, Deej and a couple people can really communicate on the behalf, they can't go out and say stuff like that, right? And they have to always put it in the lens of the corporate light that's, essentially positive and, hey, we're working on it, right?
Yeah.
So
do you know what I think the biggest mistake was the Seraph Towers? It was almost like a test whether there would be buy-in if you put an activity in a public space rather than having a separate bubble that was match made. Because it's like, if we put this big activity in the environment, will people do it? And the answer was resoundingly no. Like, if you go try to do a Seraph Tower right now, there is fucking no one doing it and you can't complete it.
Yeah.
And not only that, there's no reason to. And one of the reasons for that is there's no reason to do that. And what would have been interesting is, imagine if Seraph Towers had the rewards from Menagerie. Would have that made that world? Do you imagine like a world where Guardians were flocking to public areas to farm roles? Like, that would have been a different experience. So I sort of like, half of me thinking, was this an experiment to see if they could have player buy-in in a public space to because the thing about doing the public space from a story perspective, it's way more engaging. Right, this is in the world. There is things in the EDZ, on the moon, there are bunkers. It is in the world. The world is changing. That is more engaging as a story. But no one participated in it, so it has the opposite effect, because now everyone doesn't give a fuck about Almighty.
The other thing that comes down to the other thing that comes down to, Matt, is that like the permanence or the transience of something like this that's seasonal content, in that, it's cool. There's these big things that are out in the world now and you can go and see them, but we can't tie anything too important to them because they're going to fuck off at the end of the season. So,
well, do you reckon the bunkers, they're just going to close the doors? I reckon they're going to close them.
Yeah, probably.
The hatches will close.
Probably. Rasputin goes back to sleep. Boot, fucking done.
Yeah, but
and I think that's the flaw in it. I think that's the flaw in the system.
I'm gonna ask you, Matt. Like, and this is just my naivety is like just doing my own research on this. Like, just so I have it right from a lore perspective.
Right.
We are creating weapons via the Seraph Tower, right, to launch into orbit to combat the Veil, as they're supposedly called, the darkness, right? Is that the intention of these Seraph Towers?
I don't even know if it's more than that, because the lore book that they released was Trials and Tribulations, and it was to do with Brother Vance and the origins of that.
Great fucking story, man.
That great
Love
story.
That story.
I just reread the web lore. The web lore is Shax's origin, and which we'll get to later. This is I fucking mark my words, this is gonna be a major, major plot twist coming up soon, and I think it's related to the leaked documents, but I'm not gonna get into that. But there is some crazy, that the Bandoila episode?
Okay.
Yeah.
It is. I reread that. It is a really complex piece of writing, and it's reminiscent of Destiny 1, where you don't get the full picture when you read it.
I couldn't make it through it. It was that fucking hard to read.
It is hard. It's a hard fucking read. And it's one of those pieces that you need to read it first to know the ending, so you pick up on the clues as they're being dropped as they go through. Because if you don't know what they're referencing, you just miss everything. And so and it's fucking huge document. I don't know how many pages it is, but I spent.
It's done.
Yesterday, I was like, normally it takes me half a day research, half a day writing, and I'll get a lore video done. Yesterday, I spent the entire day reading and writing notes still, and I had already read it once.
Damn.
Yeah, I feel really bad because I criticized the writing at first, and it has a lot of depth. I'm still not a huge fan of the complexity of writing. It reminds me of like The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings. Like it's very descriptive in a lot of areas, and feel like it takes away from that. But it's also, I think, part of its mystery. Anyway, we'll talk about it in a little bit. And I forgot what I was saying. But and your question was, there's no real lore in there about the role of the Seraph Towers. I mean, my only understanding is it's to prepare Rasputin's defenses for the Almighty. That's all that I've taken away from it. Unless it's in the Seraph gear, I don't know.
I haven't read anything. That's what I was gonna make my video about this weekend. And then as I was doing my research throughout the week, I realized that like there's nothing really like I kind of feel you, right? You want to be able to base your content off of something concrete. It's fun to go in deep in the weeds and come up with like a theory yourself and like, put your tinfoil hat on and do shit like that. But it's more fun to be able to like tie something to an authentic experience within the game. And I was looking into that and I just didn't see anything like concrete, like why are we doing this? And I think, again, you can kind of piece it together, right? Bife did a very good piece on this as well, sort of explaining what his thought process was. And I actually agree, right? It's some type of, we're preparing, as you're saying, for the darkness, the almighty, whatever, right? Some type of enemy by creating this defense web of satellites or some type of weaponry that would surround Earth and the Traveler and protect it against what's coming next.
Yeah, because I think the reason why there's not much on it is because it is a red herring. Because I do think this is going to twist to preparation for the pyramid ship invasion. Yeah. And if you look at Brother Vance's story, that's what that's about, essentially. And if you look at these other origin stories, like I don't know, I think that's because they said that they want to link the seasons together, and I think you don't link this season to Shadowkeep through the Almighty. You link it through the pyramid ships. So I think that's going to be the thread. And maybe that's why there's a lack of information there. Is it that it's a red herring in regards to defense preparation?
I think the whole purpose of this season really is just to clarify where Rasputin stands, and that's it. I think the Almighty the Almighty is just a thing. The Almighty is just a MacGuffin that here's the thing that causes people to interact with each other.
Yeah.
And okay, now here's the shit or get off the crapper moment that we need for fucking Rasputin to decide where he stands. And now he's decided where he stands. We deal with the Almighty, and then now we know we've got Rasputin on our side, and we fight against whatever comes next season. I think that's as simple as it is.
I agree, but in my mind, right? There was never really like a doubt in my mind where it stood, right? Like the argument was always that he prevented the Traveler from doing something, right? Whether that was leaving or escaping or unleashing some type of greater evil against us, right? Something like that, right? That he was the one who fired the shot, kind of thing. But if you really like kind of analyze that, he fired the shot to save us eventually, right? He didn't do that, right? The Traveler had to stay here for humanity to stay safe in some capacity. Because if the Traveler had left, at least in my opinion, he would have ended up like, the Fallen, or ended up like any other species that the Hive conquested, right? In the Books of Sorrow, right? They just don't exist anymore because there's nothing there to protect it. So I've always seen him as like a good guy, right? Whether he helped us or not, that's, the dude's clearly been through a lot. Like and Matt, I think you're probably more familiar with this than I am, but from what I've read, at least in the lore, and my takeaway was that during that collapse moment, right, during whatever happened there, he was almost split apart and fragmented to an extent, right? And that's why Maya is essentially going around the system trying to put him back together and get him access to other bunkers. Am I on the right track there?
The new web lore, like, very conclusively answers that question. Okay. I think we're almost. We got more TWAB to talk about.
No, I won't touch it. I won't touch it. I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, we'll circle back. We'll circle back.
No, I was just thinking, because what will happen is meanwhile you got to get fucking deep here, and then we haven't finished the TWAB.
So the whole TWAB's about fucking cheaters, and we didn't talk about it.
Yeah, should we? Because that won't take.
I don't think we really need to get into the nitty gritty of it, but the most important takeaways from the TWAB this week for mine are that Bungie is revisiting the philosophy on more than a few things with respect to trials. The way it rewards, the way it rewards participation at lower levels, the way it rewards the continuation of cards so that, you know, like people aren't farming the front end of the card. I think there's some important changes to be made there. They seem to be on the right path with them. Probably the biggest takeaway for me, aside from the fact that, you know, like they addressed how they go about combating, exploiting the game. They can't really give us any detail because that just gives the people who exploit the game detail on how to one-up them. So that, for mine, is, you know, like... It was a very long way of saying that they're listening, they understand, and that is what it is. But it was nice nonetheless. But probably the biggest takeaway from the whole thing for mine is at the very tail end of the security discussion is them saying that they are realizing now that maybe they have made an error in having trials be free to play for all, that they're considering making it locked to investment in your account or putting it behind a paywall if they feel the need to. Now, they kind of seem to sit on the fence a little bit with that, in that they're like, oh, well, look, we want it to be something that everyone can jump in and play, but if it's going to be to the detriment of the entire community, then it can't be. Look, the clearest I can be about this is it is a detriment to the community for it not being fucking at least paid content. I would be completely happy if they said you needed 100 hours in game and paid content for it to be fucking done. Like, I don't think anyone who is invested enough in Destiny to be playing pinnacle fucking, like, trials, the be-all, end-all PvP mode, I think it's a no-brainer. I think they could go next season and say, trials is behind a paywall. You need to have 100 hours on your account to even get into it. Or 100 hours for every fucking win level or anything. It doesn't matter. Because anyone who's here and is rusted on and is absolutely invested in it, they're there already. And the fucking cheaters, it just cuts them straight out of the fucking equation, nearly.
I think my only challenge, right, and I don't disagree with you, right? I think there needs to be some level of sort of premium exclusivity with it. But I think the true challenge is not necessarily that the game is free to play. It's that the security infrastructure that Bungie has implemented is poor, right? That's the problem. If the security infrastructure wasn't poor, it shouldn't matter if you're free to play or not, right?
I think that I mean, while that statement isn't incorrect, I think that something like this is always a fucking arms race. Mm-hmm. It's always an arms race. And you look at other free to play games like Warzone and things like that, they have the same fucking problems. It's not. Yeah, well, it's not endemic to Destiny. It's a wider spread thing, and I think that one thing that people aren't going to want to do if they are literally just going into a game's ecosystem to fuck the other people's experience up and cheat, because ultimately most people who cheat in Destiny, or at least egregiously cheat, get banned. Yeah. They're not going to want to pay fucking excessively for that experience. So if every time they get banned, they have to re-buy the seasonal pass.
You're not going to do that.
Yeah, you're not going to do that.
I mean, I 100% see Wally's thing, because it doesn't directly address the problem. The problem being that it's not a robust cheat system, right? However, it gets you a very similar outcome, which is getting rid of cheaters. So it's a strategy to reduce the problem without addressing the deficit. I think the interesting point that came to my mind is, like, when you think about other, and I think this is maybe where Destiny falls down, think about other free-to-play games. Mm-hmm. They have Fortnite, Call of Duty and Activision. They have a huge budget to be able to keep a free-to-game play and to constantly upgrade their security systems. Bungie, I can't imagine, can, and this is where I think it comes down to logistics, have a free-to-play game and be able to ban and modify their system enough and adequately with their income.
Yeah, I mean, you've got one end of the spectrum, which is Activision, that have almost limitless resources to be able to throw at this problem to protect the integrity of their game, which is ultimately what it is. And then on the other end, you've got Bungie, a newly recently fucking, single mum, trying to just do the best with what they got. So I'm not going to say that Destiny's anti-cheat right now is adequate, because it's not working. But I do believe that this is not just a Destiny problem. I think it's fucking heaps more widespread than that. I think, as Freshy brought up in chat there, you do see less of it in Warzone, but in Warzone, you're also playing against everyone on console where it isn't as much of an issue. Where if you play Destiny on PC, you're playing in the ecosystem directly where
PC,
where this shit occurs. So it's not a like for like comparison. So you're talking about a third of the play pool.
You know, the other secondary problem is account recoveries. Yep. Is that should be an easy ban, right? Through IP tracing.
Yeah.
Because
look at it this way
that's
too.
The industry that's encouraging the cheating.
Well, the other change that they made is that if you are knowingly in a fire team with a cheater, and that's not you lobby with them, that's if you load into an activity in a fire team with a cheater, you are also liable to get banned.
Good.
So what
you should be.
So what that stops is people going, oh, okay, well, I'll get these 2 fucking accounts that I'm farming wins for, and they can sit there idle while I go and on this third character fucking cheat.
Yes.
And for mine, like a lot of people's knee-jerk response to that was, oh my God, like what, I have to fucking quit the game if I load in with a cheater? No, it's based on the fire team. Unless you were consciously fucking loading into something, at least this is my understanding, unless you are constantly from orbit loading in with someone who is using exploits, you are not doing the wrong thing.
That is one of the best solutions, right? Because it sort of makes you collectively guilty, right? So if I'm a cheater and I take you 2 with me, and you guys are knowingly doing it, you both should be fucked, right? Because you know that you're doing it. I agree with that solution. I'm sure that's probably caused some panic and commodium a little bit, right? Because people took it like, what if I'm in that lobby, right? Am I fucked too, kind of thing? But I totally agree. I think that's a great solution, right? Because it basically says if you are in the mob, you are going down with the mob. There's no question.
Because like the cheaters that I posted on Twitter, right, in our trials games was literally doing that. It's free money. The game is free, right? They get their account 960. He had infinite ammo. He had infinite heavy. He spawned with super. When he shot the ground, everyone died. The 2 players were English names, right? They were AFK the whole time. He was obviously getting paid to carry them to the lighthouse on a free account. It costs him nothing if he gets banned, and he gets straight back in there and does it again. And they pay him however much money to get them the lighthouse carry.
Can I just add something here, right? Just to indemnify myself from the record just a little bit, right? Okay. Just bear with me, gentlemen, right? I feel like this is my preacher pew a little bit when I want to talk about this. Okay, so as we were going through the Undying, right? You know how the Undying title, to get that stupid scout rifle, Randy's pitchfork or whatever it is, Randy's throwing knife, right? Yeah. Okay, and you have to get points, right? You get a certain amount of kills and you get points, and the points aren't clearly called out, like it's headshots, whatever, right? That was the last thing I needed to do. Legitimately the last thing I needed to do. I was so fed up with it, so fed up that I did look up, but did not purchase, just on the record. I did look up, but did not purchase what it would take to get that done for me, that I didn't have to do it myself. That's how fed up I was with that. That's me being that's a personal problem, right? This is not a criticism of the seasonal system, but I have looked at that myself, and I just want to say that process of, like, let's say, account transfer and carries and payments, it's not very difficult, right?
No.
Like that system is super,
and it's not fucking cheap either.
Yeah, I know what you're paying for, right? But the value of what you're getting, you can get the not forgotten hand cannon, right? And some of those hand cannons that are relatively difficult. And I think the value is, I'm kind of curious. I might look it up, but I think the value is something like $250.
Yes. Because the reason why I know is I had those companies contact my brand manager and ask if I wanted to do a sponsorship. and my brand manager's like, and I was like, hold on, give me the website. And now I get fucking ads for it because I've been to their fucking websites. All my fucking Google advertising is all like, are you too shit to get Thorn? Here, $250 US. So fucking like, but yeah, it's like it's a shopping cart. You're like, what gun do you want? You're like, all right, I want Not Forgotten Lunas and Thorn. I'll give you a discount because you're purchasing fucking 3 items. Plug in your PayPal. You're ready to go, man. You give them your details. Like, go pay on your account.
Yeah. Again, I just want to clarify, right? I think there's an argument that can be made. But they're legitimately, yeah, I imagine there's going to be some pitchforks, but there can be an argument made here, right? That the reason some of this exists, not all of it, right? And this is just a hot take, so don't crucify me. The reason some of these things exist is because the barrier to get these things is inherently time consuming, right? It's not that they're necessarily difficult. All of those things in that are achievable, right? But the amount of time investment to get them is almost unreasonable for many players. So I think you kind of have to look at that as sort of a symptom of what's going on. Again, hot take.
I think that
right,
irrespective, it would be going on. I think whether or not, because you're talking about like pinnacle weapons and shit like that are hidden behind high levels in comp, things like that. So, you know, there are, as much as like now the survival playlist, not the survival playlist, the whatever, what's it fucking called?
Freelance.
Yeah, whatever that is. It's the skill-based matchmaking unit now, so you can go in and get a relatively competitive game for the most part. There's some people who just aren't interested in that. So I understand, like I think while I do agree that there would absolutely be a factor of people want that because they can't be fucking asked spending the time to get it. I think that I think that there's a kind of a unique problem in Destiny, right? I think Destiny at some point suffers from a little bit of an identity crisis, at least because of the way it's evolved. People want to get everything, right?
Yeah.
But the way the game is, and the way the game to an extent has always been, is that people kind of can't get everything or shouldn't get everything unless they are spending their entire life playing the game. Now, there are people who go out there and legitimately devour this game and get everything. And, you know, career streamers, things like that, people who are, you know, have the time to do that. That's all well and good. And they deserve all of those things. But I think it is unreasonable for someone who has limited time to expect that they will get everything. So I think there's kind of like there's okay, well, this is the philosophy by design, but also that it comes back to the individual to go, hey, look, maybe if I can't fucking spend the time to do this, I probably just shouldn't have it to begin with. The end.
You know what? And I think Bungie needs to pick that track and make that part of their messaging. Like, this will be hard. Not everyone will get it. So then, like, when people enter the game, like there's whole games that I know that I'd probably like playing, but I'm like, mate, I know that I'm not going to get everything. It's going to piss me off, so I'm not going to play it. Right? There almost should be that expectation, like in Destiny, but it sort of floats between like everyone should be able to get everything. Not everyone can get everything, and it's sort of like I don't know. I feel like it needs to pick the messaging. Like, this is not a game for everyone. You would not be able to get everything.
Yeah.
You will need to be dedicated to get all the titles and all the weapons if you have time. And then you just sort of, because that's like Jug said in chat, it's a cultural thing. It's not actually to do with.
I think the most ridiculous argument you see around this is, well, I paid for the game. Why shouldn't I get it? Like, you paid for the game. Like, that is so fucking ass backwards. It's like, go and play World of Warcraft right now, pay for the game, and expect to get every item through the game's entire fucking history. Good luck.
Yeah, I mean that's people who didn't play Burning Crusade and it shows, right? That's what that shows, right? No, seriously, right? Like, because original Warcraft,
it's entitlement. It's just base level entitlement, and that's all.
It is. And I just want to say, once you said that, right, about it's a cultural issue, 100% agree. It like clicked in my head, right? It is very much an entitlement thing, right? At least where I think most of us are all at, we're an immediate gratification culture. You click a button, you get something. You run on the treadmill, you expect to be in shape, right? You order food, it comes instantly. We expect the same things about the time that we're putting in. So when we run into these barriers of like, oh my God, I have to invest a shit ton of time and I'm not getting what I want, it's like a culture shock a little bit, and you're kind of reeled back. And I think personally, that's what I experienced a little bit. Instead of just finishing Randy's pitchfork and getting that done and spending another, 30 games and scout rifle matches, right? I looked up, but again, did not purchase an account transfer to get this, right? So just want to clarify.
So look, in my mind, to summarize this whole cheating stuff, right? It's it's obviously a complex problem, and with anything, doesn't matter what fucking industry, and if you have a complex problem, you need a multifaceted solution.
Oh wow,
and
good
and
word
the thing-
use.
CEO of Activision here, and and the things that we spoke about was, I think account recoveries is something that needs a solution. Obviously, like Wally said, the infrastructure needs to be improved, and the third thing is what Log was talking about, which is access to it. And I think if you tick access to peak level activities with trials, with paid, you improve the infrastructure and you get rid of cultural things like paid recoveries, mate, that's going to take a huge chunk of hackers out of Destiny.
I think the thing that I am saddest about when it comes to trials, taking away all of the cheating and kind of the rapid kind of corruption of what it was as a thing, is that we never really saw that resurgence of trials streamers in the lobbies, right? Like in the Twitch lobby.
Yeah.
We never saw that real boom back into contention because there are so many fucking unknowns. Like you look at Grenada Jake's first week, right? He did more completions than anyone on the Xbox, carried people through, and I thought, fuck shit, this is going to be great. This is what I wanted this to be. And then it was kind of like within 2 weeks, the whole thing just went and it was dusted because the integrity of it's fucked. He's still killing it, but on PC.
People watching it, man.
Yeah, and deservedly so.
Well, I
He's
think
an incredibly good.
You got some other factors in there too, right? Yeah. The cheating element does make an impact on your big streamers. You just don't want to deal with that bullshit, right? You got to imagine like it's probably fun, Malin. I'm sure you've done it on stream, right? Or even you log where you've run into it a couple times. You're like, right? And then time 10, it's like, okay, this isn't funny anymore.
Yeah.
The Valorant launch, I also think had a little bit of an impact to play, right? Destiny, in my mind, is one of those things that is something people come back to seasonally for a little bit, and then it gets stale because it's essentially the same style of game, right? It's the same formula. They're going to go to something else. So I think there's some other factors in there that have impacted, right? I think the one thing that I have been more and more surprised about is sort of like a lot of Destiny streamers coming up in the ecosystem of just Destiny. Guys like Dr. Lupo, for example, Glad, some of those really prominent, excellent streamers that almost came up within the Destiny scene exclusively are now sort of using this cheating opportunity, not necessarily Dr. Lupo, but let's just take Glad, for example.
Yeah, Glad's a good example of, I know what you get now.
Using this as an opportunity to say, I want to distance myself from this title, right? This is a factor. I want to explore other titles, right? He's, in my mind, whether this is his intention or not, this is the perfect opportunity for him to explore how he can extend his brand beyond Destiny, because he can simply just go back and point and say, the game has cheaters. What the fuck do you want me to do, community of followers? Yeah. And
I think for Glad more so than anything, it was the fact that the depth of content isn't there.
Yeah,
I think that is ultimately what it was. He has been an absolute grinding warhorse for fucking years at this point. Mm-hmm. He's played more Destiny than probably fucking most of us will ever play in the entire course of the rest of our life. But when it comes to the point where he's like, I can't do this anymore for the sake of my own mental health, I'm going to branch out and try other things because there's just not enough here to keep me, like there's things to do, but he's not engaged in it. At least that's the way I read it. I think that it all harkens back to the kind of the content model that we're in. And for mine, and look, I'm gonna make a rash statement, and then we're gonna jump into opening the chat to questions because I think
we haven't got those on law yet either.
What fucking? Well, we can come back to law while people do it. No one cares about
mate,
law.
You are blue balling a whole bunch of kids in chat right now. The one to hear me and Wally nerd out.
Mate. Yeah, no, I'm gonna let you, and I'm gonna go get another can of Solo and let you have it. But I think that Destiny needs to go back to at least 4-month content cycles and just allow for the fact that people are going to drift in and out of the game. That you cannot keep 100% of people engaged 100% of the time without spreading your fucking butter too thin on that piece of toast and making it a shit dry piece of toast. There we go.
No, I hear you. 100% agree. 100% agree. And I just want to say, your chat is making some fucking great points. So
law over and over again.
Mac, I don't know who that.
All right, you let the people have it, boys. You go at it. I'm gonna go get another can of patriotic Solo and give myself the diabetes.
Oh, is this the time? Can
go?
we?
Go. legit.
All right, I'm gonna do the total American thing and get another big tall can.
You're gonna settle in.
Everyone,
No,
okay,
that's all right.
everyone
I'll
settle
hang.
in.
I'll hang.
You have 60 seconds, everyone, to go grab a drink really quickly, and then I'm gonna take you through this fucking script that I've been working on for. If you count the stream that I read it in, the Bandoila stream, that was probably 3 hours of reading. Plus, I probably did 6 hours of note taking yesterday.
I'll be back.
And I did another. I woke up at 7 this morning, and I did another 3 hours. Look, this has already been like, I don't know, 10 to 15 hours of work already. So it is a complicated piece, but I think it is really enjoyable. And they revisited a very, very common piece of speculation about Rasputin. So I'm going to talk about that now. If you have read the leaks, do not put them in chat. I will bash you. Do not put any leaks anywhere. I have not read the leaks. I'm pretty sure this will eventually relate to the leaks, but this is the I think the writer's intention was there was a breadcrumb trail that was put down in the web lore, and I think it's going to lead to a very big twist from what I know so far. Are you ready? Are you ready, Wally?
Probably DM me the links, by the way. I Starscream in chat. Feel free to do that.
Oh, great. Yeah, I Starscream. Yeah, if you
want to.
If you want to read some of the links. So
yeah, thank you.
The web lore, it was a big piece. I need to work out how many pages it was, but it was actually in 2 parts. So we had the Shacks web lore, but we also had 2 sections that were about Anna Bray. And it starts with essentially a volcanic storm on Mars. And Anna Bray's still searching Mars, searching for clues from her family, just sort of generically at first, but we get a bit more information as it goes through. But she finds a Braytech institution. And she has her ghost with her. And she also has Rasputin, who she calls Red. And it reveals an interesting way that she speaks to Rasputin. And she actually has, what's the word? You know, people who can play music, but they see colors.
Yeah, it's like inner helmet, right?
Polysynthesia. Something like that.
She communicates to Rasputin through multiple senses. She sees colors. She has sensory stuff, and so the way that so like one of the things says a synthetic tone ripples marmalade hue through her helmet. So she sees colors and stuff about, and she's actually speaking to Rasputin in this fashion. So it develops a bit of a relationship between Rasputin and Anna Bray. So they have this trio. There's Ghost, Rasputin, and Anna Bray. They're on Mars. There's a big storm, and the storm basically washes away some of the sand, and they see a Clovis Bray facility. They enter the facility, and Rasputin has no prior knowledge of this Clovis Bray facility. He's like, basically, what the fuck is this? I know everything, and I'm not aware of what this facility is. So they keep exploring it, essentially. They get down, and they also hint at what Anna Bray's looking for, and they call it Atlas, which is Clovis Bray's, her grandfather's mythical journal. And that's all it said about it. So she's sort of trying to find clues about her family, essentially. They get into the secret bunker, and there's some very heavy blast doors that have been opened. So someone's entered the bunker prior to them. And we don't know the exact timeline, but they predict that it's a golden age because they end up finding a bunch of dead exos inside. And the exos look like they've got golden age tech, like a giant drill of some sort that they got through these blast doors. They're all dead. The security systems still work in the bunker. So these big machine guns basically drop down from the ceiling and scan Anna Bray, and then at first accept her and don't open fire. They then proceed further down and find what looks like a gigantic server room. The description's pretty hard, but it sounds like, and I don't know if this is a real thing somewhere, but you know, you have liquid coolant for your PC. It sounds like a fucking oceanic pool room with servers that are like submerged in liquid coolant. So it's fucking big. And they're like, holy shit, we've discovered Atlas. We've discovered like Braytech's history. And they realize that that's not what they've discovered. What they realize is they have discovered a system that was developed to be separate from Rasputin, independent of Rasputin, and to take Rasputin down if he turned on humanity. And that's why Rasputin had no idea about this bunker. And what the bunker did is it took a copy of his mind and everything about Rasputin. And there's a hint that Anna Bray was selecting exo hosts to host Rasputin's mind. And it drops this massive bombshell about in the fucking middle of it that there's this scary of hope. There is and this is what the whole video. There's more to this. There's way more to this, but this is where I'm going to end the video. Is there is the foundation for a clone Rasputin in an exo body to be out there. That's sort of the kick at the end of that.
Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah. So I'll see if I can find. Do I have the?
Dude, that's sick. Because I read some of this, right? And just side note here, right? And just because we're riffing a little bit. Do you remember when there was a lore card that came out? I think it was like Taken King a while back, where I think it was like Zavala and Cade were making that commentary back and forth to each other, and it was like totally, yes. I think it was meant to be humorous, right?
Yeah, and he was like you know that you're Rasputin. Yeah. So I think the writers. So the thing is, it could just be the writers playing with that, but they definitely come back to revisit that thing. And I want to find you. I don't actually have it right in my notes here, so I'm going to find you the exact quote so you can feel the power of it. There is way more to this because Anna Bray then goes on from there to find the network that was intended to basically partition Rasputin's mind. And then there's this whole bunch of fucking crazy, like you see my notes, there's a whole bunch of crazy exo dream sequences in there where they were experimenting on exos, and this one exo like wakes up from this dream sequence in the space station that was a partitioned part of Rasputin's mind. And I'm writing notes, you're like, is this the exo stranger? Is this who the exo stranger was talking to? Because it's a male exo that was like a partitioned component of like Rasputin's mind. And I got to the end of reading all this fucking shit, and I was like, I feel so bad because I ripped on this fucking this piece of writing at the beginning because it was a complex piece of writing. I just didn't fucking get it at first, and I had to read it twice and make detailed notes on it. And I think this is going to be a big twist. And when I've mentioned this theory to someone, they've then partially spoiled it for me by telling me a tiny part, not much. They told me who the character was, and in my mind, I'm like, fuck, I think I know where this is going to go, and it's going to be fucking massive if these leaks are correct. I think it's a leaked lore book, so I'm expecting at some point another lore book. I'm expecting a lore book to drop, and I think the information I put in this video will set you up to understand what happens in the next lore book that comes out, which is basically what I've sort of just...
Dude, cool, man. That's sick.
It only took us 5 years to get there. It's all happening so fast.
But that's always been the beauty in my mind of Destiny lore. I think especially like when all of us started doing this, right? There's so much legitimate upwind to interpretation, right? On some of these, like, and you can take one of these concepts, right? And it's like, as you've done, right? You've written pages of notes on this. I have never been that enamored, you know what I mean, by anything else in any other lore series out there. Nothing else has done that to me, where it's like it's sort of taken my imagination and really run with it. And I've been very happy along this entire journey of like, well, what if this is connected and this is the story about this, and how does the Deep Stone Crypt affect this, and like where does all this come together? And I think that is like the beauty of Destiny lore. And so I appreciate what you're saying about like the concept in the lore books sometimes are difficult reads, right? If you've ever read Charles Dickens' Tale of Two Cities, if you've ever read that in your life, that is the fucking densest, stupidest paperweight ever. But if you read it, like if you legitimately read it, you understand that every word placed in there serves a purpose, right? Very much like a lawyer writes contract. There's an element there where, and a coworker essentially told me this, right? And I agree with him. In contracts, every word is written on a specific purpose, right? There's a specific reason why that word is in there. And I believe in some cases, like the book you're reading now, there's a reason why every single word is written in the way it is written. And there's the reason why things are vague and not vague. So this is exciting, man. I'm super excited to see where the story goes.
If I share my screen, will this break the setup?
Yes. Okay. Unless you replace your camera with it.
If I turn my camera off and then put the screen share on.
Don't. Just read it out if you're going to read something out.
I was just going to show you all my notes on it, but this is the.
I'm just imagining that fucking Charlie Day meme of Charlie Day just like in front of the phone.
Yeah, like, and he's got like the lines pointing everywhere. Yeah.
If someone could do a Photoshop job of that with Matt's head on it, just with Rasputin written behind him, that would be fucking much appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah. So so this is it. Echo appears to have been a contingency program that activates afterward. They would also had a cornerstone schematic of his brain. Light, static, fuzzes from bubble, speakers on Anna's dash. Her helmet, my notes go over it, on a hook behind, because I write on a PDF, so my notes
sure.
behind her. Rasputin's uplink is offline. Anna chews on the information for a moment. A foundational brain model would help with containment stability after the partitioning process. It's like a front porch for your brain. It goes on, Ginger continues. So your name is in Anna. Your name is cross-referenced all over this Anna. Neural webway, psycholinguistics, exo brain maps with candidate profiles. It looks like Clover Spray was syncing Rasputin's basic core with viable hosts. It does not get fucking more specific than that.
Yeah. Dude, that's cool.
Do you know what I just remember this links to? Do you know the fucking... Do you remember the Seven Seraphs, right? The Seven Seraphs. Do you remember the hidden bunker in Rasputin's vault? Have you ever seen that?
Yeah, Destiny 1, old school, right?
There are 7 seats with Rasputin's core and a fucking cable going to them.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, the Seraphs piece...
You're saying that 7 Seraphs might be 7 Exos that knowingly or unknowingly carry segmented portions of Rasputin.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so I think you gotta look at, like, so Bungie's always done this, right, with a lot of their writing, is that, like, Seraphs themselves, right, they're like angelic creatures.
Yeah.
Right? They're like harbingers of something with immense power, right? So there's a lot of symbolism in the language that Bungie uses, and there's a specific reason why they're calling them Seraphs, right? So, you know, me personally, there's got to be some type of connection. You know, I think it's very, very obvious. I can't say what it is because I just don't know. But I think if there's any truth to what you're talking about here, Matt, there's an opportunity for there to be multiple versions of this, you know, like Exo Stranger style person, right? Exo Stranger style character, where they're all different in some capacity. But even though, and correct me, right, they retconned the Exo Stranger, right? She doesn't exist anymore in the lore, or is that?
No, they basically said they were done with her.
So she still exists.
Yeah, she still exists. They said they were done with her lore, basically, that her arc had finished. And then what happened was it was actually Vicarious Visions that helped with a release. And they actually it wasn't in a lore tab, it wasn't in-game, it was like an augmented reality game that they did for people to find the fucking spear. And in those puzzle pieces, it essentially pointed to her identity. And so there's always been a bit of a like, is this official? Is this not official? I guess it's official.
Yeah. Okay. All I'm saying, right, is that there has to be there's some gaps there, right, in the story of Rasputin.
Yeah.
And like I said, I haven't seen the leaks yet. I've read the same, sort of web lore series that you have. I had a different takeaway on it completely. But again, like I usually kind of read something once and then I got to go back to it again to really digest it. But I'm with you, man. Like I think truly the one that really most interested me is Brother Vance in the Lighthouse and the mechanic of what that is, right?
Yeah.
That there's some real unique, like, what is it communicating to? And I think it's fairly obvious what it's communicating to, right? But like I think that the crazier part is that, like,
But why, I guess, or how?
why is it, on death, why is it being communicated and why are the tones different, right? And why is Brother Vance even doing this in the first place? Like, obviously he wants to impress Osiris, emulate and innovate off of Osiris, right? He's enamored by his character, so he's motivated by trying to be him and essentially better than him, right? But still, at the same time, like, Osiris told Saint 14, like, hey, the previous person who occupied this was up to some shit that we don't agree with. And Saint 14's like, yeah, we're going to do Trials of Osiris anyway. No big deal, right? Like, like, come on, right? Like,
what's the worst that could happen, man?
You're talking about one of the most iconic characters next to, like, Toland, who has been essentially guiding the character in some aspects and being a focal point of the lore and a primary character, telling another primary character that, like, hey, this isn't a good idea. And Saint 14 essentially just being like, unless I'm reading it wrong, there is no mention of him making any action against it. Like, the Trials of Osiris are still going to continue under his purview. So,
yeah,
He's a Titan,
I'm
man.
interested to
He's
see
not about the thinking.
where the in-game trials, because everything's going the direction that trials is probably not a good thing, right?
there's a card. There's a card where Saint stops a match, right? Or stops, like, a match because a warlock was using some type of energy that was just, like, not. It seemed as if it wasn't of the light.
He was going for the final death, basically. And
And it was suffering, right? It was like the opposite of the light in some aspect. And, like, what I got away from that, and again, there was, like, I think the 4chan leak about this, right? Is that in the coming Destiny DLC, right? Destiny 3, whatever that looks like, there's going to be another subclass which essentially allows Guardians access to control some type of element of the dark, right? And my whole thought process on this is super simple, right? But in the Gardener and the Winnower style lore books, right, it's essentially saying that these two forces, the light and the dark, have written themselves into the game that we're all playing. And they're giving Guardians and non-Guardians abilities, paracasual abilities to break the laws of physics, essentially magic, right? Titan's abilities to fucking do this and swords and all that, right? It's all magic, and it's because these two forces have written themselves into the game that allows everything to break, right? My argument is that these two forces are the same coin, just different sides. So, just because we're using the light doesn't necessarily mean you can't flip the coin and then be using the dark. And there's some references of, like, look at Dredge and Yor's storyline, right? Maybe a little bit of Toland's, storyline. These are individuals that have kind of weaved the boundaries of, like, good and evil, right? Light and dark, and used both to their advantage. So I personally want to see that, right? I want to see us being able to sort of, the old school KOTOR, light, dark, right? Good versus evil, light side, dark side, force kind of thing. I would love to see something akin to us being able to use the other energy, right? The dark energy.
I hope so. You know what I love?
God,
I love
freshen things up a
having
bit.
to look at logs sit through us fucking bang on about logs.
No. Look, you know what? I'm fine. I'm good. I've got a bit. Well, I've gone through it already. It took me about a minute. But sometimes I recognize that sometimes the best thing I can do is just shut the fuck up, and this is one of those moments.
No, I hope all that stuff eventuates with Dark Guardians. I think that would be just an epic way to go. I think they're nowhere close to having those kind of systems involved because you need your allegiance quest types of stuff. You need separate campaigns. You need all this sort of deal because I think it would be a bit shallow to just say you can use dark powers now. But
yeah,
nothing changes for you. But maybe that's big D3 or whatever the final iteration of Destiny is, which would be cool. But man, it's been a while since I've read a piece of lore and got not really. I do get excited when I make videos. I usually start off with, "Oh fuck, I really wish I was just playing Destiny right now," or "I wish I was just goofing around." And then I start reading, and then eventually it gets a hook. It gets in, and then I'm like, "Okay, this is the topic. Let's double down on this topic. Let's do a bit more digging." And this one's fucking got me hook, line, and sinker. So it'll be fun to share it with people and apologize for giving so much shit to the fucking.
Yeah, we're all allowed.
Dude,
we're all allowed to be
hard
wrong.
read. It was a fucking hard read, man.
It was,
I'm
dude.
excited.
I didn't even make it all the way through.
Dude.
I was just like, I read fucking scientific papers all day, every day, and I couldn't even be fucked making my way through it. So
it was tough like that. So yeah.
All right. Well, look, what we might do, if you've got any super burning, urgent questions that you need to ask in the chat, fire them away now. But we're gonna look to wrapping this up. This is probably, honestly, like, you know what, last week was probably the shortest episode we ever did, and this could well and truly be the longest inside the space of 2 weeks. So this is
hey man, as long as you guys keep supplying beers on my end, right? I'm pretty sure I signed that contract, right? That
we'll
drink as much as I want. It's all supplied. I'm good, dude.
That sounds like exactly the kind of contract we would be party to. That's absolutely it.
We just said, I guess, like, the shit is beer, like, just Foster's, just a fucking case of Foster's.
Yeah, but like, everyone thinks we drink Foster's when we don't. So
I know that's the joke.
Yeah,
it's kind of funny.
So I've only been to Australia once, right? I was down in Sydney last year. Yeah, last year.
Yep.
What is the beer of choice, right? Because in America, it depends kind of on where you are, right? On the West, we have very big Hispanic culture, right? So Corona is a big good choice for a lot of people, right? And Modelo is a good choice, but like, what is it for you guys?
Oh, dude, there isn't one. There's sort of like probably 5 or 6 that all sort of sit in the same realm of kind of like, because here it's similar, but it's state based. So you've got like Tooheys from New South Wales. It's like their extra dry is probably the most widespread of their beers at the moment. Then you've got fucking Victoria Bitter, which is VB, or Vaginal Backwash, which is from Victoria. You've got 4X, which is from Queensland. So it's kind of, and what do you got, Matt, over there? Emu or some made up shit that no one else drinks ever.
Emu Export.
Yeah, it's whatever that is. So you've got that.
Matt, you're in Perth, right? Is that where you're at?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and that's the bad side of Australia, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Dude.
It's not necessarily bad. It's just 1985.
Next time Ollie, you're in Australia, visit Log in Sydney, mate, and we'll host over in Perth, and you fucking tell me which side's better. Right?
No, because this is. I remember when I came down to Australia. I reached out to Matt and I was like, "Hey man, I'm gonna be in Sydney. Is that close by, dude?" And he hit me with an LOL. That's it, just like a quick LOL. He was like, "Yeah, dude, super close." And then I looked up Google Maps and I looked up Perth and I was like, "Holy shit, this is literally like on the other side of this fucking continent." Yeah. So yeah, look, okay, ignorant American, forgive me a little bit, okay? I know my state.
I responded with just LOL.
He hit me with the LOL, dude, like a cold hard ex-girlfriend, dude. I was like, sick, dude, no big deal, like, shit.
Oh fuck! Sorry about that.
Gosh. All right. Well, what we might do, we might raid and wrap up the episode for this week. But oh my god, what a fucking show! That's probably been the most productive we've been in a long time in terms of talking about everything and anything and everything else. But special thanks, Wally. Seriously, thanks for coming on, mate. You're an absolute champion, and we kind of knew we were in for this before it all began. We it's always good to catch up, but we're going to have to definitely do it more regularly. So thank you very much.
Where can people find your content? Because you're going to be putting out some videos, and should they follow you Twitter or should they YouTube?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I don't want to plug anything too hardcore. I would just say follow Twitter. It's just at Sir Wallen.
So
and I post everything there. Content schedule is every Sunday. at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard. So for you guys, it's like, specifically you two, it's like plus 15.
Monday morning. Yeah.
So like Monday morning or some shit like that.
Yeah.
But that's my schedule. And yeah, most of the time it's Destiny lore, but sometimes I'll throw in a title, right? That, like a division title or something like that.
Awesome.
Unreal. All right. Well,
yeah, thanks for coming on, man.
It's been one for the ages.
Thank
that's
you
for
guys,
sure.
man.
No,
Yeah,
thank you.
I truly appreciate. This is like, I've done the Destiny community podcast. It's not what it used to be called. It used to be called, right, back in my day,
Destiny.
the Planet Destiny.
Yep.
Yeah, podcast, right? Whatever, right? I guess they just, no big deal. Anyway, this is the coolest podcast. You guys are fucking awesome. So I really appreciate that, right? You guys
if you
are
needed
super
any
warm and
further
welcome.
proof that we're paying Wally for his time here, you just got it.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna
contractual time allocation.
Yeah, sorry, we're at 2 hours, mate. We're at 2 hours on the dot. That's it. See you later. We're gonna go raid Riot. He is I think he's fighting the good fight for the Warlocks at the moment. So you can go and tell him how great Titans are and that we're winning. So if you want to do that, you can. But Matty, where is the lore finding people from this week?
The lore will find you in the cold, dead mindset of an exo body that is laying dormant in a partitioned mind of Rasputin. That was a bit serious, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was.
Not like last week. Who gives a fuck?
Yeah, that was one of your best ones. Anyway, goodbye.
Bye.